Hey gang, with the release of Open-XML-PowerTools on GitHub, we now have a cool new workflow that we should follow when we want to make enhancements or changes or bug fixes to Open-XML-PowerTools. In this screencast today, I'm going to just walk through this process step by step. I need to make a little enhancement to Document Assembler, which is one of the modules in Open-XML-PowerTools 4.0. And I thought that it would be helpful just to go through this process of forking the Open-XML-PowerTools repo, cloning the forked repo to my desktop, making all of the changes, making the git adds and the git commits, and if necessary, we'll do some squashing of commits, and then we'll push this to the forked repo and then create a pull request, and then I'll switch my hat from a developer of Open-XML-PowerTools to the maintainer of the Git repo, and I'll merge this newly created pull request. So it sounds more complicated than it is. Let's just get started. Of course, in order to do this, you're going to have Git installed ahead of time. And of course, in order to go through this process, you're going to need a Git login. This is free. Particularly for this type of use, you don't need anything other than a free Git account. I'll sign in to my Git account here. Here, I'm on my profile page on GitHub. The main thing I'm showing you here is I don't have an Open-XML-PowerTools repository here. Now I'm going to go to the Office dev/Open-XML-PowerTools repo. Here I'm in this repo, and the first thing that I want to do is I want to fork this repo to my private account. So I'm going to click fork. It's going to ask where I want to fork it to, and I want to fork it to my private account. Now we are in Eric White dev/Open-XML-PowerTools. Next thing that I want to do is I want to clone these fellows. I'm in an empty directory here. I need to clone the open source Open-XML SDK, and I'm just going to clone this from the Office dev repo. I intend to make no changes to the Open-XML SDK in the process of making this small modification to Open-XML-PowerTools. So first, cloning the Open-XML SDK. Now I have cloned the Open-XML SDK. I've cloned it from the Office dev Open-XML SDK repo. Now I need to clone the Open-XML-PowerTools, but I don't want to clone it from Office dev/Open-XML-PowerTools. I want to clone it from my private repo, Eric White dev/Open-XML-PowerTools. So the command is git clone https://github.com/Eric White dev/Open-XML-PowerTools. Go into Windows Explorer, Open-XML SDK, open up the Open-XML SDK.sln. I'll click build solution. It'll restore NuGet packages for XUnit. Everything built just fine. Now I'll, just for the sake of sanity, open up the Test Explorer. We'll wait a minute here, and Visual Studio will find all of the XUnit tests that are compiled in this solution. I've got 287 tests. Click Run All. And all 287 XUnit tests passed. We are done here. Now I'll go into Open-XML-PowerTools, and the solution that I like to work in is this Open-XML-PowerTools.sln. This contains just the source modules for Open-XML-PowerTools and the XUnit tests. This example solution down here contains both of those, but it also contains all of the examples. And when I'm writing XUnit tests and iteratively doing stuff, it's a bit of a pain if Visual Studio all of a sudden decides that it needs to recompile every single example. So I work in this solution for the most part. Let's build everything just to make sure everything is happy. It tells me there are 119 tests that need to be run. and they all passed. The change that I want to make here is I want to enable document assembler to, instead of using the less than hash and hash greater than to delineate the XML, we'll just put the XML in content controls. Let's take a quick look at that. In Open-Xml-PowerTools, there's a test files directory, and in that test files we'll find lots and lots of Open-XML documents that are used for various XUnit tests in the process of validating PowerTools for OpenXML. So let's take this DA001. This is a document assembler test document, hence the DA at the beginning of its name. And I'll make a copy of that, and I'll make a new document that it to look like for processing via content controls. So dropping down here, I can see DA035 is the next one. But this is a whole different variety of templates. So I'm going to make this DA100 template document. Copy, paste it, F2, DA100 template document. The actual changes that I'm making here are not so very important as showing the process that I go through to make changes to Open-Xml-PowerTools on GitHub. I'll go to the Developer tab and I'll insert a rich text content control. I'll change the title and the tag to content. And now I'm going to get rid of this less than hash and the hash greater than. If I turn on design mode, we can see the content control in a better way. Let's do the same thing down here. Get rid of the less than hash, get rid of the hash greater than. Now down here for the table, I'm going to do a similar process. Grab that XML, select it. One thing about this is it doesn't really matter whether we use rich text or plain text content controls. It's all the same as far as the way I'm going to write the modifications to document assembler. I'm going to quickly make all the changes here. Okay, there we have a happy template document. Now I'm going to write the XUnit test to attempt to process this document. Now we of course know it's not going to process properly because I haven't written any of the changes to document assembler to make it work. Here are the document assembler tests. I'll add another inline data, document assembler 100. And there we have it. We have a test for our new template document. If you're not familiar with this theory and inline data, this is an approach in XUnit tests where you can make a particular test be data-driven. You can include any number of parameters over here. In this case, I have 3 parameters. One is the template document. Another is the data file that I'm going to use to populate this template document. And the third thing is whether this template document actually reports errors or not. So I'm thinking that this shouldn't report errors. Now, one thing about these document assembler tests is that all they do is they run the code and report errors if there are errors in the template document. It doesn't necessarily indicate whether the merging happened properly. That's on my list of things to do, but that's not going to happen today or this week. I'll rebuild the solution. And if we drop down here somewhere, we'll see, yes, sure enough, there is a new test that has never been run. I'll just run this fellow, and it will run, and it will pass. Let's go see the results of that. I am going to view Solution Explorer, go to Open-Xml-PowerTools tests, and I'm going to open this up in File Explorer, and I'll go to bin debug. And what we'll see in bin debug is it creates a directory with the date and time stamp down to the second that contains the processed documents from that test run. So here we have our document assembler 100 template document processed by document assembler. And what we're going to find is that there's no changes whatsoever to this template document, that document assembler didn't recognize any of these content controls. Well, the next thing that I'm going to do is I am going to turn off the video recorder and make the code changes to document assembler. I could make all those changes live, but I probably would drive you crazy in that process. Better that I just come back and I have working code, and then I'll explain that working code to you. Now I'm done making the changes to document assembler. Fundamentally, what I had to do in document assembler is, in this method here, transform to metadata. In the case where there is a content control, then it transforms that content control into the metadata. One quick note about how document assembler works is we have these little bits of XML throughout the document, and this transform to metadata, what it does is it gets those XML elements and attributes out of either the less than hash or hash greater than, or out of a content control, and it converts it to the actual XML itself and inserts it into the document right at that point in time. This is, of course, not a valid Open-XML document because it's got these elements and attributes that have no relationship whatsoever to the Open-XML standard. But immediately after transforming to metadata, the next thing it does is it goes through and processes all of those elements and attributes, replacing them with the actual content that it generates from that XML data, and also from the formatting that was available either on those runs inside the content controls or on the formatting of the less than hash and hash greater than in the case of using the text delimiters. Anyway, that's probably more information than you wanted to know. What you really want to know is the process by which you can enhance the Power Tools for Open-XML. So I made my changes. Here we'll just take a quick look. I'll go into my test files. I have this template document here. I'll turn on design mode. We can see there are content controls here and there and elsewhere containing the little bits of XML that control the document assembly process. This is that template document that I just showed you. I'll run that test and the test passed. So now if I view Solution Explorer and I'll open this location in File Explorer, the Open-XML-PowerTools.test, go to bin, debug. There is the temporary directory that was created in the process of running the tests, and here is the template document after being processed by document assembler. And if I open it, then we see everything looks exactly as we expected it to see. There are no content controls left in this document. All of those content controls have been replaced with content pulled from the XML data. So to recap, I modified document assembler as I wanted it to be modified, and then I added 3 new tests. I have some tests here to check for error conditions and whatnot. I did something else too, which is, let's close this Visual Studio instance, and I am going to open Open-XML-PowerTools examples solution, and I've added a new example, document assembler 02. This is basically identical to document assembler 01, except that the template document that we will find for document assembler 02, this one has content controls in it as opposed to the less than hash and hash greater than. And when we run it, we'll see this assembled document as we just saw. So we've modified Power Tools, we've added XUnit tests, I've added a new example that shows using document assembler with content controls. We're ready to check this in and submit a pull request. So the thing that I'm going to do next, I'll close down all of those solutions. I'll change directory into Open-Xml-PowerTools. So now I've made all of my changes that I want to make. I've modified document assembler. I've added XUnit tests. I have created a new example. We can see that it's modified the Open-Xml-PowerTools examples solution with that, adding that new example. We have a directory that contains the new example. We have 3 new test files. We do have one funny little thing here where we have this thumbs.db. We don't want that. So I am going to grab that fellow and rm that. And now everything looks exactly as I want it to. So I'm going to git add dot, and this is adding it to my local repo that is a clone of Eric White dev / Open-Xml-PowerTools. Now if I do a git status, it tells me that I'm on branch vnext and my branch is ahead of origin / vnext by 1 commit. This is as expected. Just to make sure, I'm going to look at my remote and make sure I'm still pointed at the right place. So if I do git remote show origin, it tells me that the origin repo is github.com/ericwhitedev / Open-Xml-PowerTools. So let's push this fellow up to GitHub. And it's done. Now we can go look at that repo on GitHub and see the changes I just made. We can see that the latest commit is enhance document assembler so that it will alternately process metadata stored in content controls. I could go into Open-Xml-PowerTools examples, and sure enough, there is a document assembler 02 that is the example I just created. So we're on Eric White dev / Open-Xml-PowerTools vnext, and I want to submit a pull request back to the Office dev / Open-Xml-PowerTools. So I'll create a pull request. And the base fork is Office dev Open-Xml-PowerTools branch vnext. The head fork is Eric White dev Open-Xml-PowerTools compare vnext, and I'll create this pull request. Good enough. Now it actually automatically put me into Office dev / Open-Xml-PowerTools. This would be the part that you wouldn't see because this is only shown for people who are maintainers of the Open-Xml-PowerTools. In fact, your job is done for that moment in time once you've created the pull request until I come back or someone comes back and discusses the code and perhaps wants additional changes or whatnot. So I'm just going to merge this pull request and I'll confirm that merge. So there we have it. We have gone through the process of first forking the Open-Xml-PowerTools repo to our own fork of that repo. And that shows up in my case at Eric White dev / Open-Xml-PowerTools. I then cloned that repo to my local machine. I went into that directory that contained the Open-Xml-PowerTools, and I maintained things. I modified document assembler. I added XUnit tests. I've added additional test files to the test files directory. I added a new example that shows how to use document assembler when putting that XML inside of content controls instead of putting it inside of the less than hash and hash greater than. Once I made all my changes, I did git status, saw what I had changed. I did git add, which put those files into my staging area. And then I did git commit, which committed those into my local repo on this machine. That made my local repo be 1 commit ahead of its origin, which is Eric White dev / Open-Xml-PowerTools. I then did git push, and that pushed my local commit up to my fork of the Open-Xml-PowerTools repository. I then looked at it, made sure everything was as it should be, and then created a pull request. I then switched hats and switched from being a typical Open-Xml-PowerTools developer and put on my hat as maintainer of the Office dev / Open-XML-PowerTools repo. And I merged that pull request into vnext of Open-XML-PowerTools on Office Dev. So there we have it, end to end. This is the process that you want to emulate or use when you make pull requests or you want to get fixes or enhancements into PowerTools for OpenXML. That's all I'm going to cover in this video, and in fact, that's more than enough. Sure was fun though. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.